Let's continue on with our quick tip mixing series. We already covered the bass and guitars. Now it's time for some drums. As I mentioned before, mixing should be a cumulative process. Lots of small steps instead of a few large ones. What I've done here is output all the drums to a stereo auxiliary drum bus. So let's solo these up. We got our usual assortment of mics, overheads, room. I'm gonna mute the reverbs. Sounds dry. So first we'll start with a touch of inflator on the drum bus. Lower that down, bring it back up. Little clip. It's that little extra 5% lift that it gives the overall drum sound. Now something interesting that I actually discovered by accident was putting suppressor on the kick drum. There's a preset called Sub Bass Makeup. You can actually add a nice wallop to the kick. Let's solo it up. There's our kick. Bypass it first. Go up to the bass treatment, sub bass. Add some nice thick lows. I'm going to actually trim it a bit. Okay, let's move on to the snare drum. We'll call up a plate reverb. And I just went up into the presets and called up a thin plate. And what I'll do is I'll play around a little bit with the reverb time. Nice and short. But we need more to really push this through the mix, because it gets swallowed up. Let's bypass. It just sounds small without it. It's that little 5% once again. So let's move on from there. We'll solo up the kick, snare, toms. Let's work on the overheads, which is a set of DPA 2011 microphones. What I'm going to do here is add a little room sound using the Oxford Reverb to the overheads. Once again, I'll just call up a preset. I'll start with medium room 2 and use a short reverb time, which will help me create some depth in the overheads. And all I've done is add a little bus send to each of the overhead microphones. We'll mute the room. Add some snare. And put the rest of the drums in. Sometimes soloed tracks can sound a little over-reverbed or over-processed, but they'll sound good in the mix, and that's all that matters. I always say whatever plugins it takes to get the job done, use them. And on this snare, I have just a touch of inflator as well. But let's take a look at the all-important room mic, which happens to be a Beyer M160 Ribbon, one of my favorite drum room mics. Once again, I'll turn to the inflator for that little extra push. Let's just play it down a bit. Pull it down. Often I'll pull the output level down a little too, because you can really crank the input, and I'll use that aggressive sound to my benefit. Let's put it into the mix now. Little adjustment. Listen when I pull the channel volume down. You can really hear how much that one mic adds to the drum sound. On that mic as well, I'm going to cut some of the highs out, especially around the hi-hats and cymbals. We'll bypass. Since I'm using so much of this mic, I want to smooth out the overall drum sound. There's the hi-hat. Pull it down. Roll some top off. It's aggressive but not harsh. Again, all we did is a few small steps. Some snare plate, a bit of room sound on the overheads. Let's listen to how each element was a small step. Bypass. Each effect should have a purpose and a place. You can hear how just a few good plugins can make a drum mix pop.